It's only Dave's podcast. Dave's podcast, episode 15. A sacking, hog roast, 2 CV, and a rabbit shoot. After our first Christmas, we started planning various events to raise the profile of Terry Collins and Daughters. First, we held a lambing day on the farm. We invited customers and advertised in the local press. Most people love to see lambs in the fields in spring, leaping about, but they also are aware of the ultimate purpose of producing roast lamb. I remember once doing a stall for Terry and Collins at the Newbury Agricultural Show, a major farming and countryside event. We were doing sausage tasting. I offered a tray of lamb-flavoured sausages on cocktail sticks to a passing lady. "Oh no, I prefer to see my lambs in the field." Ridiculous, I thought. That's my phone. I do apologise for that. Where were we? Oh yes, Newbury Show. So this lady complained about that she really wanted to see her lambs running around the field. I thought, how ridiculous. Why was she there at an agricultural show? Didn't she realise that farmers wouldn't be keeping sheep if there wasn't a market for the meat? I thought she was quite an ignorant woman. So people gathered at Park Farm in the middle of lambing time, in the hope of witnessing a birth. We ran a barbecue and gave out leaflets and information about the shop. By now, we were driving a Volkswagen Polo, and this was a company vehicle. We used this for deliveries. It was also used to collect the lambs and pigs from Reading Abattoir. But very soon that would all stop. We weren't allowed to do this anymore, and we had to pay delivery in a chilled truck. Customer deliveries were generally on a Thursday and a Friday. Some of my customers would ring through orders for me to bring on the fish van. A packet of sausages, a beef joint for the weekend. Debbie had 3 or 4 call boxes for deliveries in the local area. We were getting people travelling a fair distance to do their weekly shop. These ones that really believed in the ethos of organic goods. Strangely, we had a large number of customers who were vegetarian, but would come in for rice, vegetables, cereals, and the eco-friendly cleaning products. Customers were travelling 20 or 30 miles to stock up with organic meat. But due to the way it was produced, it carried a premium price, and for some of the local people, that's what put them off. Now, our butcher, remember, Mr. Lying Thieving bastard, despite Debbie's encouragement, was not on board with the whole high welfare organic ethos. We offered him a staff discount, but he never brought anything from the shop. Then, one Friday, by chance, a lady came in to buy a whole beef fillet. Debbie was aware that we had one in the outside chiller. This would be a considerable sale, £20 or £30 worth. But when Deb went to walk into the walk-in chiller, she could no longer find it. She came back and asked Mr. Lying Thieving bastard, the butcher, and he replied that he had sold it earlier. At this point, Deb became suspicious. While he was in the other room, she checked the till, and nothing really matched the amount of a whole fillet on the takings for that day. Deb realised she couldn't use the phone in the shop, so she made an excuse and said she had to go out. She went down the road to the nearest phone box and called Martin and Louise at Park Farm. She voiced her suspicions, and they backed her up, saying, "Do what you need to do." Returning to the shop, she confronted Mr. LTB, and he went into full denial mode and so hurt. "Oh, you don't really trust me." This went back and forth, but Deb wouldn't let him leave, saying eventually, "Look, if you've done something silly, just be honest." Eventually, he opened the boot of his car, and there was his weekly shop, obtained courtesy of Terry Collins and Daughters. Dried goods, the whole pack of fillet steak, even a pack of toilet rolls. The goods were returned and he left. Deb phoned the farm again. In the morning, Mr. Lying Thieving Bastard, you see why we call him that now, arrived for work. Deb wouldn't let him in the shop. She handed him a box of his property with his P45. Maybe we should have called the police. Deb had to deal with this all on her own. He could have turned really nasty. I was angry and annoyed. When you employ one person and he is the linchpin of your business, you go out of the way to keep them happy. He was a Reading supporter. I had taken him to see the Royals, paying for all his drinks. Now, people who know me understand that this is a big deal. And this is how he repaid us. It was the fact that the type of things that he had stolen, he had clearly been doing this as a regular occurrence. A footnote, a year or so later, Peter, Debbie's brother, who had helped us in the refurbishment of the shop and would often call in when passing, so he knew the butcher well, went into a butcher's shop in Reading. While being served, Mr. LTB walked through from the back room and suddenly turned round and hightailed it before he said anything. Debbie managed to get by on the Saturday, and we arranged for Russell to come on Monday and prepare some bits for the week ahead. By now, Deb was okay doing minor cuts of meat and could knock up a batch of sausages. Our next butcher was recommended by someone, and he will be referred to as Mr. Robert Honest as the Day is Long. He became a great friend and went on to work and live at Park Farm for many years. Then later on, he went to work for the electricity board with Debbie's brother Peter, and he is also in one of the teams supervised by Debbie's nephew Mark. This caused a bit of a problem. After the last podcast, I had a frantic phone call from Mark saying why was I calling Robert Mr. Lying Thieving Bastard? I had to remind him that we had a butcher first that we had to sack, and then Robert became our butcher. He was very relieved as he was due to have a meeting with Robert the following day. Robert was from South Devon and much more in tune with the farm and the shop ethos and plans. He really was a great asset. His knowledge and enthusiasm was extremely helpful. We had some big events planned in the summer. A hog roast was one of them. This was done on the farm. This was kind of a thank you to customers and a way of raising our profile. The plan was to camp in a field on Park Farm. It was a beautiful setting with a river running through it. We actually camped there quite a few times while we had the shop. I would go down on a Saturday, set up the tents with the girls, and when Deb finished work on the Saturday evening, she would come down and we would spend all day Sunday cooking on the fires, the girls running around on the grass. I would do a bit of fishing, and then we would do a bit of skinny dipping in the river. Oh, sorry, I was just having a flashback there. Right, where were we? Back to our plans, and Robert, honest as the day is long, and me were both camping down at Park Farm. The plan was to get up at the crack of dawn to light the fire and get the hog roasting. But after a heavy night of drinking, crack of dawn turned out to be 9 o'clock instead of the 6 o'clock as planned. We were now in a frantic rush to get the hog roasting. The other problem was that it was also the hottest day of the year. So we were building a huge fire while sweating in the baking sun. But it was a successful day, and people were quite happy waiting for the pork while relaxing in the sunshine. So as I said, we would often camp on Park Farm. It was the only way to take a break in the time that we had the shop. We couldn't go away for any longer than that. Now, by this time, we had bought a Citroen 2CV. When we started the fish round, we didn't have a car, having invested everything in the original fish van. Following this, we had a succession of cheap, unreliable vehicles. A Ford Capri, I love my Ford Capri, an Austin Princess, and a Mark II Cortina. So finally, stupidly, I said to Deb, look, we've got a budget of £500, you can choose the next car. And she decided on a green 2CV. The 2CV is a very basic car. It was designed by the French to drive over a ploughed field with a tray of eggs on. So it was ideal for camping down Park Farm, but not very ideal for driving around on a normal road. It had no heating. Well, I say that. It had cardboard tubes that diverted hot air from the exhaust area into the car. When I used to come home from work, I used to kiss the girls, and I could tell that they had been out in the car because they smelled of carbon dioxide and exhaust fumes. One day, when camping on the farm, I had all the girls in the car and was driving up the farm to get fresh water. Smoke started coming from the front of the car. I got all 5 of the girls out. That was my 2 girls plus the 3 Park Farm girls. I managed to open the bonnet, and the smoke was coming from the starter motor. I managed to beat it out with a cloth to put it out. And then I went off from there and had to buy a new starter motor and fit it while we were camping. Another 2CV story was we were at a wedding reception at Cheltenham, the racecourse. It was John Walsh, my best man from Power Gardening. Remember episode 6? Come on, keep up there will be a test later. The girls were very tired in the evening, and we made a decision to leave early, which was completely nothing to do with the fact that England were playing that night. We set off and got on the M4, and the gearbox went on the car. I could only get into second gear. Now, a 2CV isn't the fastest vehicle at the best of times, so we were very unpopular crawling down the M4, but we made it home, and I saw the second half. If we were out and about in our 2CV, other owners would frantically wave at you, which was rather nice. It was kind of a recognised thing to do. I don't know whether this signified, oh look, there's someone as stupid as us. Another time camping, Martin was running around on his motorbike. Now, I've never been into bikes, but I think it was an organic 125 Trials sports bike. I needed some fresh water, and he said jump on. He raced across this bumpy field with me holding this 25-litre container, trying to hold on with just one hand and my thighs. The other vehicles we had on the farm were quad bikes. These were really fun to drive. You just needed to open the accelerator and the centrifugal clutch would kick in, and away you went. One time when we were camping, my Uncle Roger and Auntie Marion came down with my mum and dad. Now, being from London, my auntie was always game for a bit of excitement. She actually took me to my first major football match, Chelsea v Everton. Peter Osgood scored 2 goals. That'll tell you how long ago it was. She insisted on the match being as near to the shed as she could so she could join in with all the songs. So when given the opportunity to have a go on this quad bike, she jumped on and I sat behind her. But before I could run through the rudimentaries and driving instructions, she revved up the accelerator and the bike leapt forward, right towards my dad's new car. The most expensive car he had ever owned, and would ever own. He had acquired it as he had just retired and had treated himself. I frantically grabbed the controls and managed to steer it away, but unfortunately we headed straight towards the river. The bike flipped over and we disappeared under the water. My mum stood there thinking that she had just lost her sister and her favourite son. But we spluttered to the surface. I only suffered a few stinging nettle stings. My auntie said she was fine. But when she got back on shore, they quickly left. She didn't want to make a fuss. But the next day when we got back, we phoned up and found out that she had spent the night in High Wycombe Hospital. We rushed over on the Monday afternoon to see her. She was very glad to see us and really appreciated all the motorbike and trials magazines we had bought her to cheer her up. Anyway, back in the shop. As we got more established, we diversified and did more game. We had a local gamekeeper who was in charge of culling the deer population at Englefield Estate. But we would never knew if he would come in with a deer or not. The weather might be bad, it was the close season, or he just missed. When I was going down to the Mar Fish Wholesaler yard, often a driver would return having been out all night and he may have hit a deer in the road. He would ask me to prepare it so that he could sell it to a butcher's in Hook. We also got inquiries for fresh rabbits, and we decided we could do this, as there was plenty on Park Farm. Mr. Robert, honest as the day is long, had been shooting in Devon, and Martin also had some experience. I myself had no idea, but they said they would need a light man. So, on a very frosty night in November, we arranged to go out on the farm. So, Martin is driving a 4x4. Mr. Robert, honest as the day is long, and myself are standing in the back of this. I have a powerful lamp in which I would dazzle the rabbits with. Robert, honest as the day is long, would be standing right next to me, firing his shotgun. So we set off driving across an uneven field of Park Farm. I was endeavouring to keep the light still while staying standing up in the back of the truck without holding on to anything. Then we spotted a group of rabbits. Bang! We pulled up, collected the rabbit body and threw it in the back. So now we're racing along with blood making the back of the bed extremely slippery. As the evening went on, it got more and more perilous. The evening was really frosty, so my eyes were streaming with the cold and my hands were absolutely freezing. Next to me, Robert, honest as the day is long, would be firing his shotgun, inches from my ear. But we survived, but we never did it again. So we were now working up towards Christmas 1990. It was busy and we were taking a lot of orders for Park Farm produced turkeys. Robert, honest as the day is long, was working very well. He loved turkey plucking, as he was from a rural background and he loved working on the farm. For Robert, honest as the day is long, this would be crucial for his future. Christmas Eve, people were queuing to collect their festive food. I even met Ruth. Do you remember Ruth? I worked with her when I worked at Aldermaston. She was collecting a large beef joint. She was now married with a couple of children. Do you remember which episode Ruth was in? We had a few days off at Christmas, which was lovely, as the girls were more aware of Christmas and everything it involved. After, as January moved into February, do you remember the recession that wasn't going to happen? Well, things started getting difficult. Customers who were not entirely on board with the organic ethos, but just liked our products, started to question the extra cost. The recession actually didn't affect me so much on David's Fresh Fish. Customers would rather have a little bit of what they fancied. And as unemployment increased, I got to meet a lot of dads who were at home in the day. They would come to the back of the van, glad to talk to somebody new. And they also had no idea about quantities or budgets. By the middle of 1991, with the lease up for renewal in the new year, the decision was made to close the shop and relocate to Park Farm. Work started converting a barn into a shop and buying a second-hand walk-in chiller. The fridges, chillers and fittings from the shop would all come over to the new premises. From the middle of 1991, Debbie was no longer taking a wage from the shop. She only took the £60 to cover childcare for Linda. So now she was working 60 hours a week with no money. We were worried we would be liable for half the losses or any money incurred in Terry Collins and Daughters. We kept quiet, not daring or wanting to ask the question. Mr. Robert, honest as the day is long, would relocate to Park Farm. They brought a mobile home for him to live in. He would cover the shop on a Thursday, Friday and a Saturday. The rest of his time he would work on the farm. As he had experience of driving tractors and the rural life, he took to it like a duck to Park Farm pond. But this was a very difficult time for Debbie. She had poured her heart and soul into the shop. She was the main driving force. Customers loved her. She always went above and beyond to serve them and make sure they were happy. One Friday, Debbie was delivering to a customer in the middle of Reading. She carried the call box into the house, but on the front passenger seat she left her handbag. That wouldn't have been so bad, but inside the handbag was my banking, which had the week's taking in it. Anyway, someone smashed the window and grabbed her handbag. It was completely by chance, a totally opportunistic crime. But when he saw the £1,000, he must have thought it was Christmas and his birthday all rolled into one. But hopefully it might have occurred to him why it stank of fish. I hope it was really a smelly week. But it was a real setback. We always told Park Farm that we had claimed it on our insurance. But because we had left it in the open, that wasn't really an option. It probably took us a year to get straight again. It nearly finished us, the financial worries. I began to think, would I just be better off working for somebody else? Now, remember Ruth? From which episode? It was episode 8. That's right, episode 8. So more on the closing of the shop, maybe a fishy tale, and a new job in the next episode. Well, if you've enjoyed this episode, you know what you gotta do. You gotta like it, and you gotta share it.